Centerstage Church.
Sorry.
And
I'm sorry.
that's okay. I'm used to Alexa talking. The name of our church is Centerstage Church. We've been a church since 2004. It's when we incorporated. We occupied 2 or 3 different temporary facilities in Apache Junction. At first, we were in Thunder Mountain Middle School for 5 years, and we were at Ironwood for 5 years. We were at the beginning down in the school in the Walmart area down in Signal Butte and Elliott. And we have been leasing all of that time. We're not a mega church by any stretch of the imagination, about 150 people. And recently we were asked to give up the facility that we've been leasing in Apache Junction over on Ironwood. Through a fairly quick series of events, this facility we became knowledgeable about. We decided that we would begin to pursue first leasing it, and we do have a purchase agreement as well. So the church is in negotiations to purchase the building from the owner sometime in the month of September 2022. We are a rather unusual church in that we also have a second organization that we run, and it is a fully functioning community theater. It's called Zao Theater. If you look out front, you'll see the sign that says Zao. Most people don't know what that means. It is a Greek word that means life. And Zao Theater produces Broadway musicals and plays. We have been in existence since 2014. We have produced about 26 shows over that time, 3 or 4 a year. And when you exit today, there is a picture out there, a photograph of the cast picture of Hello Dolly, which was the last one we did at the Ironwood location. So we're excited to be here, and we look forward to being a part of the community. Let me get to the particular reason that David has invited us here today, and we invited, I guess, first you invited us, and then we invited you to have the meeting here. And that is the sign request. It is true that we did request a variance to be able to use a electronic sign, and we were a little bit surprised with some of the concerns because they surfaced so quickly, and we didn't have a chance to talk to anybody about it. So we very much appreciate the time today. And let me just say this about the whole request. We already owned this sign at our other facility. It has been up since 2017. It's sitting right out there. So if you exit today, it's not turned on, but when we moved, we didn't have anywhere to put it. And so temporarily it's put there based on the proceedings and how this thing ends up. But let me start really with the basics about how our feelings are. In coming to Gold Canyon, we have as a church and as a theater absolutely no desire to cause rancor among the residents. We are you. Our people live in a lot of them live in Gold Canyon, and it is not our desire to do something that would be controversial to the point that it would affect our vision for the church and for the theater. And we consider that we are you, and we want to be part of the community. We support the dark sky philosophy in general, and we want to be part of that. And it was to that end that we requested the ability to put up the sign. So let me give you some information about the sign. If you look out there, and those of you that are on Zoom can't do this, but in front of the building right now is a monument sign that was used here. It is currently approved, and it has been disabled temporarily pending the outcome of all of this with the county. But the sign out there is taken, I mean, it's turned off, and our sign is turned off because it's in the parking lot. If you look out there, ours is on a trailer. We have no intention of parking a trailer and turning the sign on, but that's how we used it at the school where we rented, because they would not allow us to put something. City of Thatch Junction required that something be movable in case if we left the facility as a tenant, which is what indeed happened. So the first thing is that we believe in the dark sky philosophy. I'm an outdoorsman myself. There's nothing worse than gaudiness, especially in the night sky. We support that as a church and as a theater, and I as an individual. That's number one. The second thing is the history of that particular sign that we already own. We came by it honestly. We bought it in 2017. Yes, it cost about $50,000, but that's irrelevant to this discussion. And so when we left, naturally, we took it with us. It was one of the assets of the church. And we began to see what was required to use it in our new facility. So we come by that rather innocently. We did not sit in a room one day and say, let's see how we can cause division in the community that we're moving to. No church would ever do that. Let me say also that the results of the sign deliberations is not a deal breaker for our church or for our theater. If it turns out that we can't use it, then we will move right on with our desire to help the community and to provide quality entertainment through the theater, and we will turn the old sign back on. And we mean that sincerely. We're not upset that somebody would feel differently from us. We live in a free country, and we believe that it's okay for good men and women to have disagreements, to talk about them, because that's how we figure out what to do. That's just like a family does. And so that it's not a terribly huge issue for us, but we do consider it to be a valuable enough asset. And we think, in addition to the community, that people would be proud of. So there is some information out there. We don't know where it came from, but it's incorrect. And so if people want to have an opinion about the sign request, we think it best for us, but also for everyone else, to have accurate information. And when you have accurate information, you can make the best decision for the community. So here's some things that I think need to be corrected. Number one, you've seen in some of the letters that have circulated the word neon. We are not proposing a neon sign. Our sign is a digital LED sign. It is not neon. Now that may be an innocent mistake, but the word neon is pejorative in the sense that we think of Vegas when we use the word neon. We think of big tube lights with letters. And so for whatever reason, we want the community to know that our sign is not a neon sign. Second thing, through the engineer's report that we have regarding our digital sign actually produces less light than the sign that was approved before. Sign that was approved before is fluorescent. You can call it neon if you want, because the light is produced by gas in tubes. So that's a fluorescent sign. You can see it out there. The fluorescent tubes are taken out, but there's about 8 to 10 of them. And I saw it lit up when we first rented the building. And from what we're told by the engineers of our sign would actually produce less overall light in the night sky than the sign that is currently approved. So if we decide against moving forward with our LED sign, we will put tubes back in that sign and we will turn it back on with no hard feelings to the community, because we want to be part of the future of Gold Canyon. But it is less light what we're producing. So we would want people to know when they oppose something that they're actually opposing something that helps the dark sky philosophy, not encumbers it or makes it worse. Let's see here. Our sign is completely controllable in terms of the speed of changes, and we have every intention of abiding by a designated time where the sign actually dims at one point, say 7 o'clock or whatever. I don't have specifics yet, because that's something that would be required by the county, and then turned off at a certain time to preserve, again, our belief that the dark sky is a very valuable asset for the residents, for the community of Gold Canyon, and we want to be part of that. I think that's
Okay.
kind of where I would stop, and I think I've talked enough.
So we can
yes.
take questions or?
Okay,
And let me moderate from here on for the discussion to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. And what you just heard really fits very well with Gold Canyon Community Inc.'s own method of operating, if you will, in that we try to identify community concerns, create a safe and friendly environment in which those concerns can be aired among everybody towards the goal of making our community a better community. So with that, we welcome any comments first from the board and then from the audience. Anybody wishes to add?
Okay.
Hey, Roberto, this is Jerry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you. Okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
hey, Pastor, I met you a couple months ago. I'm in Mountain Brook. And what we did there, we had an old sign and we went to the LED route, and it took us about a year to go through the county as well. They just don't have a lot of approvals. If you're interested, you may want to drive by there and maybe talk to the community manager, or I'm available to give you some history because it's non-intrusive, and we have the rules of the road as far as when it goes on and when it goes off, and it's controlled by the management staff there. So we'll have things like pool events, social events, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just around the neighborhood if you haven't seen it yet.
thank you very much.
Next,
Roberto, this is Steve, I have a question.
yes, Steve, go ahead.
Pastor, I'm curious about the current hours on the old existing sign, and will the new sign be in the same hours of operation or will be different? Can you describe what those hours are?
I don't have the information of how the sign was used because this building was vacant when we first looked at it in January. If you recall, there is a neighbor church next door that originally owned this building, and they're the ones that bought the sign a million years ago and put it there. Then they moved next door, sold off this half of the facility, and we bought it from the investor. The sign was on every night, but I can't tell you what time it came on. Before, my guess is it came on at dusk and it went off at dawn, because it was, I think, just set on a timer. It wasn't controlled, and it also wasn't dimmable. So it's either on or off, but our digital sign can be 70% of light, 50% of light, so as it becomes darker, the candle power in the sign can be reduced. But I do not have an answer to your question specifically, because I don't know.
So with the new variants for the new sign, there's not a request as part of that on what hours the new sign will operate?
Our understanding from the county, we withdrew the proposal so far, so right now it's off the table pending our desire to move forward, which is really kind of up to us to represent, and we would do so based on whether or not we feel like, the community accepts us and accepts it. Before, in answer to your question, we didn't know what to propose, so we were depending on them to tell us what would be necessary to have approval. So I'm not trying to skirt your question, but we don't have a proposal of what we'd be willing to do. What we're willing to do is what the county tells us they need us to do.
Pastor, you might want to mention that the variance you were asking for was only because the county does not have a code for LED lighting, correct?
That's correct. Did you hear what he said?
Of course, repeat it.
Yep.
Why don't you say it again, because you said the
Well-
county does not have a code for LED signs like they do. Well, I don't know what the county has, so I can't speak for you, but yes,
That sign is controlled with the security lighting.
yes, so it comes on, but it comes on whenever we tell it. So,
I mean, the old sign comes on with parking lot lighting.
with the parking lot lights, yeah. But we don't really know what time that is, because that timer's been reset. When we first came in.
Steve, maybe go to another board member now, Steve.
Yeah, I think Dick.
Thank you,
had a-
Pastor. Yes.
You're welcome. Yeah. Dick.
Is the sign on all the time or just when you're showing?
The sign is for the church and for the theater. It cycles through things, but one of the things we thought was the most attractive was a very gradual change to a new picture or whatever display. So it is equally used for the church and the theater. To answer your question, the way we used it so far was that it was on every day or every night, all day long. So you can see it during the day much better than a sign that's not lit. But it was not just when we had a show. To answer questions regularly for the church and the theater. Very, very slow, transition from 6 or 8 different slides that were used in publicity and various things. Yes, sir.
I find it very intriguing, the data you gave, or what was quantitative, you said that the lighting that emanates from the old lighting, if you have the fluorescent bulbs in it, is, I don't think you said how much more, but it is more than your digital light would be.
That's correct.
I think it would be very interesting to get those numbers. Since you talked to an engineer, you probably have them or could get them. And perhaps Jerry mentioned the light up at Mountain Brook facilities. Perhaps we could easily get the same data for that. That comparison might be quite instructive, because any of us could go by at night or anytime and look at the Mountain Brook light as a comparison.
Yes, my opinion, if you will, about that I shared about the brightness of the sign is a layman's opinion. It is based on what we've been told about the nature of fluorescent light versus the nature of LED light. But whatever that quotient is, our sign can be reduced in intensity electronically. So we'll put it wherever we can to be able to use it, is my commitment. But I would be more than happy to gather information. It becomes a little complicated on a technical basis because the nature of light, I'm told, that is fluorescent hits differently in a light meter, or if you will, than the nature of LED light. And it's complicated to explain. That's my understanding.
I'm sure that same engineer or any other company could give you the wavelength, which would be, you know, is it bright, is it in the blues, is it in the yellows? And then so we don't have to get overly technical. The wavelength range or colors, the various, we get comparison of presumably 3 lights, one that's been in existence and working at Mountain Brook, the 2 lights here.
Yeah, well, that's a very, very good idea. My guess is that when people oppose something, they just drive by and say, oh, that's ugly, I don't like that, or that's not ugly, I guess that's okay. And that's a political decision. You're talking about the technical side. They both need to come together. You're right about it.
It proposes to do exactly what you
Yes.
suggested.
You're correct.
That we have a accurate information on which to base a decision.
Yes. And if it could be proven scientifically that the light level was less, then the argument for the dark sky disappears, presumably.
At least it's greatly weakened. You know,
Right.
comparison, you can operate sign or the other. Most of we dark sky advocates would probably be saying, we have to have light, let's have a
Because-
general one,
Yes,
but that's so true.
that's very good.
Let me remind us that I'm a 30-year resident here. And when we first saw the arrival of the first gasoline service station here in Gold Canyon, we had a comparable concern raised. And the lighting was changed, so it's not a new concern. It's an ongoing concern anywhere people gather in the Stardust area. Have we got anybody else online?
Okay. Anybody online would like to speak? Please unmute yourself.
Hey, Dave, this is Connie with
Connie.
Supervisor Surtees' office. I just wanted to say good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting our office. We are interested in everything that goes out in Gold Canyon. It's our community as well. Thank you, Roberto, and your membership for inviting us. Wanted to welcome Mickey back into a very nice community. And I live in Apache Junction. I've seen your sign for years. And it wasn't obtrusive where it was. So I just want to say that it was a welcome sign. Because we do embrace economic growth in our communities. And I've been to your theater several times, really enjoyed it. It's very well done. And Supervisor Sturdy wanted to be here today, but he has family from Ukraine here that he's got as guest at his home right now. So they do spend their weekends going and seeing Phoenix and getting to know the area. I don't know who you've worked with in community development or if you've talked to the code compliance director. Paula Mullinex is her name, and I'll be happy to send her contact information. She's very well versed in dark skies. I've been working with her on the front side of the supers on residential dark sky issues, and she's very good to talk to. I think it would be good. I think Charlie had some good recommendations on other signs that you might be able to get information on and bring that to the board. One thing I think is very important, and you hit on it, is that we need to get the word out that this is not a neon sign. Our office, all the comments we've gotten have been on a Vegas type sign. So we know that it's not that way. We've seen it. We haven't seen it in your current location, but to to really let the people know this is not a neon sign. I think that is so important, and that you have the ability to brighten or darken the lumens in it. I think that's a big plus. It's just the way that it's brought out to the public, I think, is going to be your challenge, and doing that very well with other comparisons in the area. That's about all I have for right now. I do want you to know that we are looking at our codes for the dark skies right now. We have a challenge with Maricopa County down at the new Legend Sports Complex. You can see their lights from every corner of Pinal County almost. So that has really brought the dark skies to light for a lot of people in Pinal County. And so they are starting to talk about our codes. And like I said, Paula would be a good contact for you to work with.
Thank you very much. Yes, anybody from the live group here? Yes, Roberta.
I want to say, Pastor, your name is Nikki Gross.
Uh-huh.
After, we've met you a few years ago, certainly will not remember, but my husband and I and another couple attended one of the performances. It wasn't a Broadway show. That time it was a musical. It was, I think, a trio, local trios performing, but we had a delightful time. We enjoyed it very much. We were very much welcomed by the church. We felt very comfortable there. So, in general, I'm delighted you can be in our community, and we're really intrigued about the idea of having Broadway shows right there in Camden. So,
Thank you very much. We had a concert series called Valley Nights, which was not a one-night shows. That's what you're referring to. And that's still on the table to do here. We don't want to necessarily rain on the Methodist Church's parade because they do that very well already. But nobody's producing Broadway theater in Gold Canyon. So we want to bring that to the community. We are bringing that. We're excited.
I have a couple of specific questions about the sign.
And I'll walk down here closer so I can hear you better.
Okay. Couple of specific questions. Is the sign multicolor?
Yes.
Um,
You tell it.
okay.
So it's just like a computer monitor. Whatever you load on it, that's what it displays.
What is the size? I know it's outdoor.
8x4. 8x4, which is actually smaller in size than the current.
But the current sign must include the on.
No, the current sign has a message board underneath that's about 8x3.
About 4x10 on the message side, and then the upper part is back.
But we've taken off parts of this when you see it, when you exit. It's not all there. All of that would go back on. There's basically a slide in for a fluorescent light with the name of the church and or the theater. And then there's the lit message board that's white. That's what produces so much light, is that those tubes are behind that. And on both sides, there's a white message board that you can put letters. You can see that. And it's like white. My goodness, it's bright.
Okay, now here's an issue that I have, or a question I have. I know this was part at one time of the, I think it's the Baptist church.
Yes.
Or they're continuing to operate.
Yes.
So now, there was one sign. Now there, well, undoubtedly two signs.
I don't think they have plans for this. I'm friends with the pastor. We pray every morning, every Sunday morning together. Monday morning. I don't control what they do or what they seek, but they have said to us, they have no plans to put anything more than what they have out there, which is a canvas sign.
Okay, well, all right, that's curious, just from the standpoint that you're two separate entities, and there has been a lot of confusion when did the Baptist church go away? Did they close? What's going on? And I tend to think at some point that church will want to identify themselves and identify clearly to the community that they are a separate entity. And I think there's a very strong likelihood that eventually they'll decide, suppose we can have a sign. And then we would, you know, have two signs within this space.
I can only tell you what they told me.
Right, and that's not a, I mean, that, I'm sure right now, they don't. But if they experience, you know, continued confusion, it's possible, and I just think we should be aware that we could end up
I agree
two
with you
similar
about that.
signs within, I don't know, 100 feet or something.
I would suggest to you that one possible, because we're friends already, number one, and we're ministry partners already, number two, and because we want to be inclusive, number three, I think the better approach would be for us to offer space on our sign for them as a subcontracted kind of deal. Where there wouldn't be two signs, because that used to be their sign. And the property was divided into two by the county and all that's taken care of. And this was sold off to an investor, and that investor is leasing, selling it to us. And so we have an inclusive attitude, a loving attitude, which is we care about them as well. So we would want to try to help them, but we also care about the community. So it looked like the best approach and the cheapest. All we have to do is break and throw it on our sign. We were so often that'd be okay with us.
Can I just ask, I know you have roughly 150
Not that. 150 maybe.
there may be 180 capacity.
180 seats.
It's a Baptist church.
I have no
I was just curious.
idea. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Here we go.
Appreciate your thoughtful answers to the questions.
Any other,
Any other one have a question or comment?
Yeah, this is Roger Clark, Peralta Trails. And since that is a LED sign, you can vary the intensity of it. And I think that at a low level it would be completely acceptable. I don't have any objection to the sign, and I don't think most people would, as long as it's not too bright.
Thank you, sir.
Can I? make
Yes,
a comment?
there's somebody here.
I'm the one who operates the sign for the church. And I was just in Fountain Hills. They are a certified dark sky community. And an identical sign to what we have out here was just recently placed in one of the theaters up there. And their sign is acceptable to the dark sky ordinance because they can reduce it. And I saw their sign last night. And it is very nicely dimmed, but you can still see clarity on it. So that would not be an issue with our dark sky ordinance here in Old
Thank you. Somebody else?
Yeah, that was the whole point, is most of us are your LED, all the LEDs I've seen can melt your skin off your face if you drive by because they're ridiculously bright. So that's why I would add LED, like, oh, I don't think so. So being dimmable, that's a totally different story. I think most of us, whenever we think of LED, they are crazy bright. I've seen them on the freeways, you go by and they get a billboard and it practically blinds you in your car when you're driving by. So I think it's gonna light up the whole neighborhood back there. So I think that's when most people hear LED, that's probably what they're automatically thinking. So if it's dimmable and stuff, that would be like totally acceptable, like you just got that saying. And you're setting a precedent for other people too. So you can do it, okay, and I'm not gonna be like, oh, we can do it. So if you get something crazy bright, you're gonna have maybe down there. You know, if there's not some kind of, hey, you can have one, but it's gotta be low key, or you can bump it up and you're having to function, but not like screaming bright all the time, you know? So I think that's probably where a lot of people are going from.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else have a question or comment? And this has been very used. Yes, go ahead.
This gentleman really brought up something that seems very important. Allowing the nose of the candle under the tent to begin with one LED. And the minister is very cooperative on this, has put out a lot of information at this meeting. That's wonderful. However, the next company, the next business that wants to put one up and is authorized or allowed to do so, and says, you know what, I don't want to dim them. What's the recourse we as Old Canyon residents have when these people, companies, businesses, corporate decide to put them up there and say, we're not going to dim them? Thank you.
Can I speak to that?
Sir,
Well, I can't speak for the county, except I can share with you what the county said to us in the preparation meetings, and several of the names of people that people recommended to us to deal with at the county we are dealing with already. Thank you for those names. The control is what you're talking about, and the danger of it's a good illustration of the nose of the camel under the tent. The way to whack the camel as he comes in the second time is not to approve it, or to give the same controls to any other subsequent organization that is given to us. And the county had already said, it's gonna be this and this, it has to, dim at 7 o'clock. I use these as a figure of speech, I'm not giving you specifics. But theoretically, the control is your ordinance requires you to dim the sign at X time in the evening after dark. And it requires you to turn it off at a certain time, say 10 o'clock or whatever, so that people, it's not like, because you're right about that. But this is not, a gambling casino.
Yeah.
Where we want people to go, whack, with a sign to lurch over. So you're right, though. And this is the politics and the control of any sort of level of government, which is what do we do to make sure that the greatest good is accomplished and that we're part of the progress of the community as technology changes and also keep the control where the control should reside, which is the people of level heads. And that's the government.
And the follow-up.
Presuming.
we do a very quick follow-up because
Yes,
we have to have a
Is there a county organization enforcement arm to this, to these permits?
Let me respond if I may. That's precisely part of the mission of Gold Canyon Community, and that we are dedicated to bringing concerns from the community, like you've expressed, and ensure that the governance process functions to reflect the concerns and give the results that the community decides. So this is a very important discussion. There are two other topics that we want to complete within the next. How many more minutes do we have?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay, so the next item is an update on the Arizona State University study that's being prepared for us to work towards developing a better sustainable long-range development process for Gold Canyon. And our acting secretary, will report on that.
Okay.
The professor conducting the study for us was not able to attend today, but he gave me a synopsis of where they stand right now. And first thing is the students, they engaged with a deep geo-design scenario planning exercise in March and April. And that geo-design system is basically a computer modeling system. For all the analysis the students have been doing since January, they got together and they put all this into a computer modeling system. And it mushed all that data together and it's helping them develop several scenarios that they can present to the community that incorporates all that data and make sure it all matches. Puts it all together in a coherent fashion. So that has been going on. The students are currently completing their group assignments and submissions that could be part of the study report. And so the next step is developing the report, which they're doing right now, which would describe the study approach, analysis, and most important findings.
We hope that next month we'll have this report from ASU and we'll be able to share that with community and start with our strategic planning process. So that's the update on the ASU study.
Next, we'll have, and our final item before we open for any last minute comments. The subcommittee reports from GCCI. First, transportation and safety, Jerry.
Roberto, what I'd like to do is, in the interest of time, I know Dale, why don't you go first and talk about your trails? That I know you're multitasking there.
You're muted. You're muted, Dale.
There we go. Sorry. I'm new to Zoom. Haven't updated for a while. About 2 weeks ago, I went and met with Kent Taylor with Pinal County Trails and Open Space Organization. Did a little review of his master plan with him, and it was kind of just a familiarization. He's pretty important to trails and recreational activities in our area. So I thought he was a good guy to know and had lots of recommendations to go meet with him. He's actually on the advisory committee for the Summit for Arizona Trails, which I'm attending right now down in Cottonwood, and been a really good meeting. A lot of good contacts, people who have worked on trail development, mapping, and those sort of things. Been informed that the state parks department is awash with money, grants available of various types. I've made some close contacts with the people that work in their grants program, and going to get an email with some training materials, how to prepare a grant. They say they get easier every one you do. So going through that, they're going to give me a lot of person to person help. I've contacted some people here that's mapping, so that in the Gold Canyon area, so that users know how they interconnect and where they can go and what's available to them. As far as GIS mapping and preparing a map trail for Gold Canyon community, the grants do fit that. Some of them have matching funds requirements of a percentage of what you get granted, but they think we could get one fairly quickly and actually fund some GIS mapping of our trail system and our capabilities in Gold Canyon. Other than that, I met the mayor of Superior. They produced a very good map of trails around their area. So I'm going to go up and meet with her and talk about what they went through to get that done. But that's kind of a summary of what I'm doing. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Dale. Good work effort. Glad you went to that conference. Sounds like it's the right place to be. I won't go over the Highway 60 changes that I discussed last month. We did have a meeting. Three of us met with Connie and with Jeff Surdy to give him an update on what the plan is. And just to refresh your memories, its short-term plan is to improve the signage and the striping, especially at Superstition Mountain, because there's access when you're coming into Superstition Mountain from 60, coming from Phoenix, there are 2 lanes there. So what they want to do is speed that traffic up by encouraging 2 lanes, and they do that by striping. At the next intersection, Mountain Brook, they are thinking about turning that 2 sequence light into 1 sequence. So both sides of 60 would have 1 light control, and that would speed up traffic as well by, as I said last month, about a minute in that cross section. Longer term, they're talking about 2 left turn lanes, and that requires funding and design. But what we're going to do is meet with them on a quarterly basis to check progress and keep the pedal to the metal. The next item I'd like to talk about briefly is the Pinal County 5-year transportation plan. They've taken one off the table, which was dust control in El Camino Viejo. And I think that was almost $1 million. So they reallocated that. What we're focusing on is Kings Ranch Road and making 2 lanes heading north from Walgreens, and making it safer and improving the access. That would help in a lot of ways, because there are funds a couple of years out to remill that asphalt And at the same time, we'd like them to expand it from shoulder to shoulder and have 2 lanes, 2 lanes heading north. On Peralta Trail, there's plans, as you know, to put sealant at least. I'm not sure if it's going to be asphalt or not, from the school to the regional park. And also there's money to remill that area from 60 to the school. So those will probably be done simultaneously, and we're looking at tuning that as well. Right now, what we're planning to do is have a formal letter from GCCI sent to the county in response to their plan, amplifying the things that we want to have included now that we're closer to the ground and in those 2 particular areas. Number 3 is Sleepy Hollow. You know, there's a flashpoint there. I know, I've read about it. And I think that a lot of us think the long-term access point to 60 is still should be on the table, but not clear how we would fund that. So wait and see on as that develops. I think most of you know the $82 million that was targeted for roads in Pinal County that has now been set back, and the money is going to be either go to the general fund or be refunded somehow, but it's not going to be used for roads. So that's very significant. And I guess we'll just read about it as it goes through the pipeline. Everybody wants that money. So that's a lot of information. I don't know if there's any questions or not. It's hard to be without seeing everybody if my points got across. But that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Next we'll hear from Charlie.
I'm the chairperson of the Conservation Committee for GCCI. I'm also the president of the Superstitionary Land Trust. Just want to report on a couple of things. We've been circulating, having government and groups sign a resolution of support to try to influence that an equalization payment that will be made if the resolution copper mine is ever approved. There's an equalization payment required at the time of the land exchange. We expect that to be somewhere beyond $100 million. That payment will have to be made not as an IOU, but cash from Resolution Copper to Region 3 of the U.S. Forest Service in Albuquerque. There's reason to think that we should be able to pressure that to be spent in Arizona, and more specifically in Pinal County, and we hope on the long time efforts to conserve a lot of the state trust land in the vicinity of Gold Canyon, particularly nearer the wilderness area. We don't know how far that would go. Pinal County, the city of Apache Junction, and just recently the town of Superior, Gold Canyon Community Inc., and SALT that started this whole thing have all signed on to that. We're trying to get as many other organizations and particularly cities. We hope the cities of East Valley will sign on to that, but that's a work in progress. So we're optimistic that that may help to conserve what is likely to be very expensive land. The other thing I wanted to mention, some of you know that there's a great expansion from, I think, the current 348 houses in Entrada del Oro to our east, by about 1,000 to 1,100 additional houses. Much of that is underway, but not quite all. So we recently had an opportunity to look at the development agreement between the developer and the county, and that's been in place since I think 2000, before 13, but it's the first house we were before for quite a few years. Most of that 348 houses were built by 2008, 2009, and then nothing happened for a long time. And now, like a great deal is happening, including a lot of great. Just recently, The Board of Supervisors passed a couple of approvals to do more grading. We carefully looked at that with the developer. It all fits within that original development plan between the county and the developer. We will have continuing contact with the developer. He seems quite amenable to that, as he was. Some of you brought up with the fact that there were a lot of working on a cactus rescue plan, we call it, in some of that area that's being graded. The developer was quite cooperative with all that. So we'll try to keep track of what's going on and ensure that it does follow the development plan. So far, it looks good. Thanks. Any questions?
We'd like to have you hold questions, you can have private, so we can complete our meeting in a timely fashion. Steve, do you have any last brief comments on the strategic plan?
Just briefly, because I know we're right at 10 o'clock. As David mentioned, we're anxiously awaiting the ASU plan results. And please note that when we get that, we will begin a community review process, because obviously a community plan has to have strong community involvement. So we're looking at, June, July, and August to reach out to the community and share the results of the plan and get their feedback. So we're anxious to do that. At that same time, based on survey results from last year, see the results of the community plan in some detail, we're going to begin a strategic planning process that will help guide our organization with the community's input on what strategies and high-level goals we need to put on the table that will, in essence, be organizations in concert with a work plan. We will begin to develop strategies that will support the high-level goals that shake out of the plan, and some of those that, quite frankly, we know result of the community survey. So just ask that you stay tuned for that. We're envisioning it will probably take the remainder of the year to get through the complete strategic planning process, but we're very anxious to begin to drill down a little bit and begin to really vision on what the future of Gold Canyon will look like. That will do it, Roberto.
Thank you very much, Steve. We're very respectful of people's time, and so before we adjourn, we want to give anybody else that has any other last minute comments, questions that they'd like to raise. If not, the community meeting is adjourned, and we will continue our monthly first Saturday meetings. And we encourage you to participate electronically or in person. Thank you again, and thanks to the church for allowing us to use your facility.
Okay, board members, we're going to adjourn this, and we're going to move it over to the conference room, and I'll fire this back up later, okay? See you in a few minutes.
Okay. Yep.